Hello and welcome to Commodity Champions. I'm Ekta Batra. Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurated the 3-day India Energy Week in Bengaluru. This is the first major event under India's G20 presidency. 650 companies will be exhibiting at the event, which is welcoming more than 30,000 attendees. The themes of the conference included strategies to deliver a multifaceted energy system and making energy accessible, amongst others. Manisha Gupta caught up with Petroleum Minister Hardeep Singh Puri, who is confident that India can navigate any price volatility in the energy market.
We do understand that a new energy economy is being written right now. What would you say? What chapter is India on right now?
Well, I don't know if I'll be as generous with words to say a new energy economy is being unveiled. The fact is that you have a changed international situation, which is, I think the coordinates of that were set by a pandemic, which had a devastating impact on economic activity, which led to economic activity virtually coming to a standstill in March 2020. Then you had slow revival. Then you had the, this entire vaccine story. And somewhere along the line, energy prices dropped and they became $19.50 a barrel. Today, they're shooting up. They're shooting up to, it went up to $120. Now we are back in manageable $80, $82. So there is a new world out there. How do countries adjust to that new world? Will we be able to navigate as newer developments take place? I mean, one large country, which is a $12 trillion economy, is reports say recovering very fast. Do they have appetite for further amounts of energy? These are questions will be asked. As far as India is concerned, I can tell you with a sense of responsibility that whatever happens, we feel confident that as we have navigated in the past few quarters, we will continue to navigate with confidence to make sure that our population, which has an energy demand which is increasing rapidly, that energy demand will not only be met, but it will be met in a manner which is sustainable and which is affordable. And, well, that's something I think that all large democracies have to do because, some of us are more robust in terms of the kind of noise level which comes back if you're not able to ensure energy affordability. But that is, I think, so a new energy economy, yes, the rules of the game have changed slightly. We are now facing a situation where newer suppliers are coming. Some of the traditional countries which had given up on production are suddenly finding that it is economically not only viable but profitable to come back into E&P. Our own E&P acreage has, we've just released 1 million square kilometers out of the 3.5, which was a no-go area. And I'm confident that the possibility of having conversations like this during an India Energy Week, this will help in our overall, energy navigation and energy transition.
Sir, maybe I'm being a devil's advocate here, but would you say that energy transition is difficult, it is costly, and there is cost competitiveness within the energy transition as well?
I don't think you're being difficult. I think perhaps you haven't spent as much time on energy transition as I have. I'm absolutely confident, as we said in the panel, people are now beginning to realize that energy transition is not only viable, doable, but it's around the corner.
Okay, moving on, renewables are growing very strongly in India, driven by government policy. That's the word coming in from Faith Birol of the International Energy Agency. Speaking to Manisha Gupta, he added that India is a major driver of energy demand growth and has emerged as the new leader in the global. Here's an excerpt of that particular conversation.
First up, G20 presidency of India. I mean, there are various sectors on plate here, but especially for energy, what does it really mean?
So in terms of energy, India has a wonderful story to tell. India has major achievements in energy in the last few years. Unfortunately, it is not very much heard of internationally. If I can give a couple of examples, India in the last 10 years or so brought electricity to about 500 million people. It is equal to the population of entire Europe. It's a huge success. Electricity means life, electricity means health, electricity means economic growth. So this is a second one. Again, it doesn't catch the headlines of the newspapers, but for me very important. In India and in many, in fact, developing countries, it is women and children who prematurely lose their lives because of cooking with primitive stoves.
Right.
The Ujjwala program was a major achievement, and again, Prime Minister Modi's program brought clean cooking in millions of families. Another area, renewables, growing very, very strongly in India, driven by the government policies, but also the economics of renewables are getting better. And recently, I was very happy to read the concept put on the table by Prime Minister Modi on life. Life is an excellent concept, how we can use energy more efficiently, how we can make wiser choices in our lives. And we have recently, in fact, made a study to show the world that if everybody, the entire nations around the world, can follow the footsteps that were described in life, we can save a lot of energy, a lot of money, and reduce the emissions significantly. So looking at all of these things together, India has a very strong dossier for the G20, and I hope India can share these experiences with the rest of the G20 countries and be a source of inspiration for the others.
I also want to talk about the Indian demand going forward, and we do understand that perhaps the major demand growth is coming in from India. Are you putting any numbers to that on Indian demand growth versus the world?
India is a major single most important driver of energy demand growth. In 2016, I remember very well, I had another meeting with Prime Minister Modi. At that time, I told him, it was 7 years ago, 6.5, I told him that I expect, I told Prime Minister, that India will move to the center stage of global energy affairs. And today, India is at the center of global energy affairs in terms of being a major driver of global energy demand, as you mentioned, but at the same time bringing renewable energy, bringing efficiency, new ideas, and being an important leader in the global south.
So when you talk about investments, I'm assuming there's that much capex around. It has to go in renewables and fossil fuels, where we are looking at underinvestment already. Yes. And then we are also looking at investments that are needed in metals and all of these minerals as well. What do you think the world will really prioritize going forward?
Now, as of today, when we look at the entire world, which IEA does all the time, we invest $1 trillion for fossil fuels and $1.4 trillion for the clean energy.
Okay.
So 1 trillion for fossil fuels, 1.4 for the clean energy. If we want to be in line with our climate course and have a secure energy system, this 1.4 trillion needs to go to 4 trillion in 2030.
Okay.
And the problem is, most of this money need to come in the developing countries. And many developing countries do not have the financial muscles to raise this money. So therefore, my hope and my expectation is multilateral development banks, such as the World Bank and other international financial institutions, to provide support to developing countries in terms of the concessional funding, in terms of the providing de-risking arrangements, and so that the developing countries have the enough means to accept the clean energy transitions. If you ask me to choose the biggest problem to reach our climate goals, I would tell you it is the financing of clean energy in developing countries, and here there is a role for advanced economies and multilateral development bank. It is economically important and morally responsible.
With the way the markets are working, and we are looking at perhaps tighter situations, especially in the second half of this year, with most banks and brokerages now saying that $100 could be coming back, How do you look at the directional move that the crude is looking at in sense of demand, supply, and price?
I think the demand is already strong as we speak now. It's about 1.9 million barrels per day, about 2 million barrels per day we expect for this year. And half of it, of the global oil demand growth, will come from China. And China is the biggest uncertainty. If the Chinese economy rebounds stronger than we expect, then this could push the demand higher up. And in the absence of the producing countries putting more oil in the markets, this can bring the international oil prices a bit higher than today, which in my view would be risky for the rather fragile situation of the global economy. So from that point of view, we have to watch the markets, and if the Chinese demand is stronger than we expect as a result of strong opening up of the economy, and then there will be some job to do from the producing countries' point of view.
And you don't think Russia is a big problem right now? Because despite the sanctions, we've seen the oil continue to flow in.
So currently it is so, but if the demand of China comes very strongly, there may be some contribution expected from the producing countries to bring more barrels to the markets.
What time are you? What place are you bending? $70, $60, or 100?
I cannot give you any price range by law, but I can tell you that if the prices are higher than current levels, it may be a red zone for many emerging countries whose economies are relying on imported energy.
Fair point. Dr. Biddle, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate this. Thank you for talking to CNBC.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, time for a quick break now on commodity champions, but stay tuned. We'll be back with coverage from the Indian. Welcome back. Energy security and energy transition are two topics which are taking center stage at global conferences. Manisha Gupta caught up with Joseph McMonigal, Secretary General of International Energy Forum, at the India Energy Week. He spoke about energy security in 2023, the potential of India as an investment destination, the changing map of energy supply, and more.
When you look at energy security as a theme, how does 2023 look to you?
Well, I still think there's a lot of uncertainty, unfortunately. We have uncertainty on the demand side. We have all this narrative about the recession and what might happen to the global economy. Although now we're starting to see GDP numbers being adjusted now because it looks like it may not be as bad, but we don't know. There's the whole question of China reopening. Is it real? Is it not real? And we think it is real. We saw the data back in November already exceeding pre-pandemic levels. That was even before the zero COVID policy was revised. So we think there probably will be extra demand because of China reopening, and we'll just have to wait and see on the recession side. But if China does reopen and India's economy still continues to thrive the way it is, I think we could be in a situation where we're in a supply crisis in 2023. We have to make sure we learn the right lessons from the energy crisis. And I'm afraid some people want to just pin the blame on Russia as the reason for the energy crisis. But I like to remind people that we were in an energy crisis even before the invasion of Ukraine. Now, certainly the Russian invasion of Ukraine has put added a premium to prices. But I think if we don't learn the lesson about a lack of investment in hydrocarbons while we pursue the energy transition, I think we're going to see high prices and volatility as the new normal. And this is something that really concerns me.
This whole conversation, especially with India Energy Week, there is this talk about ensuring that there is a balance on fossil fuels and renewables as well. And none of this is underinvested as we move towards the energy future from here on. What's your sense on where we are onto that?
Well, I think Prime Minister Modi and the government are actually doing a very good job here, actually showing others around the world that it can be done, providing modern energy services to its citizens while at the same time focusing on affordability and sustainability. So I think it's really important. I think we're talking about learning lessons from the energy crisis. I think the rest of the world can learn lessons from India on how to approach this. And definitely, our organization is worried about energy security, stable markets, data transparency. So, we've always been focused on it, but really energy security is now a term that's back in vogue, if you will, and everyone's talking about it. And, you see some countries around the world completely flipping their energy policy to try to deal with it. But, the repercussions are real and very consequential because, number one, you have all the affordability and price volatility types of issues that we talked about that aren't good for the global economy either, but it's not also good if you're concerned about the energy transition and climate. And that's because if prices get too high, you see some countries move to higher carbon, like coal, for example, sources. Even in Europe is using a lot of coal these days because natural gas prices are so high. So we're moving backwards, I think, on some of that. But the other area I'm concerned about is if you care about the energy transition, you have to be concerned about high prices and underinvestment in hydrocarbons, because if the public starts to connect high prices and volatility with the energy transition or climate policies, we're in real trouble. I know in my country, in the United States, on an issue like this, once you lose the public, you never get them back. You don't get another chance at it. So we have to be very careful. We can't, we're not going to go off a cliff here if we don't, manage and transition the transition, I think, is really important.
Surely. Would you also say that there's this whole oil map, energy map, so as to say, seems to be changing now? With Asia, Russia, India and China buying more from Russia now, those numbers clearly have changed so much in the last couple of years. And even as we talk about renewable energy, that really is concentrated in very few geographies right now. So whether it's about China, Australia, Africa in some sense, that is where you have the most metals and minerals which are required for green transition. How do you see this changing map, and would you say that we shouldn't get comfortable where we are and this perhaps would continue to change?
Well, I think there's still a lot of uncertainty about Russian supplies, but I think up until now, we haven't really seen, when the war started and sanctions were put in place. I mean, first we should note that when the war started and there was discussions of sanctions, the global community said, let's leave energy off the table. Right? So because they were worried about it's a global energy market and it's going to impact other parts of the world. We moved past that now, and then energy became one of the sanctioned areas. So when that happened, there was a lot of speculation that prices would spike, a lot of Russian supplies would come off the market, but really that didn't happen. Maybe about 500,000 barrels came off the market. So really what ended up happening was trade routes were revised. Instead of Russian crude going to Europe and the US, it was coming to Asia. So I think we're still watching this and seeing it very closely. I think most analysts that we talk to are concerned about, in December you had the EU ban on oil, but now you have this ban on crude, on products. And I think a lot of analysts are worried that the Russian crude and products, especially in the diesel area, are really important to global product consumption. And so what we could end up seeing is that having a bigger impact than the sanctions on crude, and particularly this summer, when, of course, that's the high season for driving in the US and Europe and other parts of the world. So it's the wrong time for something like that to happen. So we have to watch it very closely. I would say I think the jury is still out on the repercussions of that.
Sure. I have a couple of questions on India now. The PM Modi, when he spoke today, talked about a lot of opportunities in sense of investment, whether it was for gas or hydrogen or solar for that matter. How do you see India as a destination? Because the consumption numbers are high. How do you see India as a destination for investments?
Well, huge opportunities, I think. The transition is not just important to achieve our climate goals, but it's also important if you're pursuing economic opportunities. And I think the next Googles of the future are going to come from energy technology companies that discover or invent some new technology or maybe even some new dramatic fuel type. So we're here in Bangalore, right? It's the Silicon Valley of India, and I think the innovation and the money being invested in a place like this, that's human talent that's here, India can play a real pivotal role in helping us, see these technologies be matured and actually help, kind of the global, cause on climate change and the energy transition. So for me, it's very exciting to be in Bangalore and at India Energy Week. I think there's a lot of, as I've been walking around looking at the different exhibitions, there's so much going on here, and it's exciting to see as someone who follows the energy transition quite closely.
So I'm going to squeeze one last question. So when you look at 2023, and this perhaps is a bit of a crystal ball gazing, what do you think could be an opportunity or a challenge going forward in this calendar year?
Well, I think we have opportunities on the energy transition and climate front. Last year, Egypt hosted the COP meeting. It was the first time in Africa. This year it will be held in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. And so I think 2 years in a row of the COP meeting be taken out of Western countries or Europe, I think it's healthy because it forces us to listen to other voices. There's more inclusive dialogue. There's important voices to be heard in places like India, like Asia, like the global South. And in Sharm el-Sheikh, they started to make sure their voices were heard, and I think that will happen again at COP. And I think, so this is
Okay, on that note, it's a wrap on this edition of Commodity Champion. News continues on CNBC TV 18 after this short break. Stay tuned.